Welcome to the final event of the 9th Annual Symposium on Wildness, Wilderness, and the Creative Imagination. This is our last event, and it is an exciting one. This is a Kinship of Rivers reading with Rick Bass and then Wang Ping and Alex Wand. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our major sponsors, the MFA program in Creative Writing and Environment, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the Committee on Lectures, Humanities Iowa, and WWCI. I think that's the Wildness, Wilderness, and Creative Imagination student organization. All right. First is Rick Bass. So last May, a group of us MFA students, can you all hear me? I don't know where this is. Okay, good. A group of us MFA students drove 2 days straight in one of those big white 15-passenger Iowa State vans to meet Rick Bass at his home in the Yak Valley. After a few days of post-holing through 5 feet of snow up a mountain and then bounding back down faster than we've ever been propelled by our own legs before, illegally crossing the U.S.-Canada border on foot, and then trying and failing to carry a large rock back because Rick thought it looked really cool, twisting knees, busting our boots, literally breaking them in half, and eventually losing a wheel on an ISU trailer while driving down the road in search of Huckleberry ice cream. We learned there that Rick Bass is in love with the forest, the mountains, the animals, and the people of his adopted home in northwest Montana. And in more than 20 books of fiction and nonfiction, many of which take the Yak as their setting, he has proven that he possesses the perfect voice to tell that valley's story. Born in Fort Worth, Texas, and raised in Houston, Rick attended Utah State University and worked as a petroleum geologist in Jackson, Mississippi. Then, in 1987, he moved with his wife to the remote Yak and began his lifelong commitment to writing and environmental activism. Though recently he's shown he's not afraid of a little time in a Helena or Washington, D.C. jail, his choice defense against the encroaching logging and development interests has always been his writing. He's got a quarter-century of awards and publications to his name, so I'm not going to start listing all of them. There's a lot. There's some books over there that you should buy. But he has been a finalist for the Story Prize and the National Book Critics Circle Award, has won multiple Pushcart Prizes and O. Henry Awards, a Penn Nelson Algren Special Citation for Fiction, and a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship. And I just learned this. He's been included in Best American Short Stories among the most of any writer ever, and that's pretty impressive. So please help welcome me. Please help me to welcome. Sorry, I actually have a typo here, so I messed that up. Please help me to welcome a great writer, a great man, Rick Bass.
Andrew, can y'all hear me? That was so lovely and quick. Like it's painful to have nice things said about you, but it was over quickly. Thank you. That was, he was just joking about the illegal stuff. I really would like to come back here and work again someday. He perceived that it was illegal. I mean, Canadians are our friends. It was totally. It was not illegal. I had so much fun being back. I really love the gig where y'all come out to the Yak and I get to share my home and landscape and give some perspective on what I'm trying to teach about wilderness and the environment to y'all. You know, be specific. That's what I say every time I come out here. And then you get to be in the forest that has informed my writing and see what I'm talking about and smell and hear what I'm talking about and touch. In the case of that big rock, which thanks for the help toting it. I think it's a really important and unique part of the program. I'm thrilled and honored to be a part of it, and also thrilled and honored to come out here every other year and get to see y'all in your home setting and hear what's up, with you guys. I really enjoy the relationship. Thanks Deb for putting me, into this spot a few years ago now. Really grateful for it, and Steve likewise. Thank you all for taking me out to the Casey property. That was sweet woods. I don't want to disintegrate my credentials as an environmentalist, but those are some good-looking woods. You could kill some things out there. I mean, that was really sweet country, pretty, and great to meet Alec and Wang and share some art and music with him. Really, really honored to be here with you guys, and also share some meals. Wang Ping, you are an eater, and there is no higher compliment in my book. I really admire your relationship with food. It's all I can think about. Yeah. I'm going to read two very short pieces. Thanks, Molly, for getting me lined out here, and also the bookstore for having books, and this weird little music CD that I've got. It's not weird. It's a fine little music CD that I'm working with this band on, and I want to read a piece of nonfiction. That's kind of what a lot of us do, is environmental agitprop, and then I want to read a piece of fiction, which is what the rest of us do who don't do poems. I'll get the work out of the way first, the business of environmental activism. The great thing about getting older is you get to live all these different lives. You get to die, rot, be born again. You get to make mistakes, try again. You get to try to live by reason, and if that doesn't work out, by instinct. You can try a mix of the two. In one of my previous lives, I was an earth diver, an oil and gas geologist, descending into worlds that were a beguiling mix of the deeply physical. Sandstones, shales, and limestones 250 million years old, gritty and stinky with the sweet green-black rotting oil juice of old death. And yet it was a world of deep imagination, too, for it was your dream that led you there first. This was in the days before computers, so that you drafted the maps with your bare hands, drawing the contours that would determine your path into those unseen lands below. If the map you dreamed had integrity, was correct in all the important ways, you would pass through those gates and down into the buried landscape you had seen or prophesied. You had not made that landscape, but you had definitely created the route. And once you got there, if you got there, the treasure would be waiting. That was a long time ago. I found so much of it. I was good at it. I had an eye for it, a heart for it, and as I traveled those hills and beaches in my imagination, I developed a mind for it. The searching built within me an architecture of electricity that combined reason and imagination. Sometimes you could get to the oil by one path, other times you took a different path. That was one of my old lives. There were others, one of which was fire-breathing local environmental activist, working long hours to try to protect as wilderness the last roadless lands in northwest Montana's Yak Valley, a 1-million-acre little garden of wild Eden, snugged right up hard on the Canadian border. My passion in that particular life was for the furthest and farthest places, lands where no humans were to be found. I think it's fair to say that while I was not out to abuse the poor, they were not much on my mind. I was too busy abusing the rich during the timber wars that were ruining the community where I lived and ruining the incredible wilderness that is the essence, the signature of the American West. Beauty still matters. I lived a lot of different lives and hope that more remain, but germane to this story, I once was an earth diver. I exulted in leaving the company of mankind in a way more complete than any leave-taking I have ever known. I thought those old days of oil and gas had died and fallen away. It seems strange to me that they have returned, that I'm feeling the desire and instinct to dive, and dive deeply, as I did back in the long ago. The completeness of the dive, the impassioned thrill of the roller coaster descent, was perhaps similar to the letting go of death. Except in those Paleozoic plunges, those pin your ears back and go hurtlings down into the caverns of treasure, you always knew you'd be coming back, and there was always something to come back to. This time, I don't feel that way. This time, I worry that everything that is beautiful will not be there when I come back up, when any of us come back up. This time, then, we must all go down together. When Bill McKibben and the folks at 350.org asked if I'd come out and get arrested with them at the White House to protest and draw attention to the proposed Keystone XL pipeline, I jumped at the chance. It seemed to me as natural a response as dropping a postcard in the mail, which for these first 55 years of my life has pretty much been the extent of my efforts on behalf of the beautiful green world. I've done all the obligatory stuff that we do as environmentalists. Joined organizations, wrote books and magazine articles, attended half a lifetime's worth of meetings, gave talks and lectures, all the boring old necessary ground and grunt work that has led us to where we are, which, despite some fine days, is still a very bad spot fundamentally. A spot so bad that we must remake everything within us, I think. Must toss out our old hopes and fantasies and instead reach into a place, and what an old-fashioned word this is, of reckoning. In that place, where you look finally at not just the true state of things, but the what comes next, well, the science of it is a bitch. It hasn't at all been an overnight change. Bill, for instance, has been talking about what's happening for over 20 years. But it's here now. We each helped bring it. We all helped bring it, and now we each have the moral chance of trying our best to unmake it, to send it away. I, for one, am grateful to Bill for preparing a path, cultivating a heart of furious and abiding love, as if tending a garden. I'm grateful to him for keeping the gates open so that those who choose to walk through them, and in that passage becoming more beautiful, are able to do so. Maybe we will win, or maybe we will fail spectacularly. But how wonderful, how liberating to discover that the more dire the situation becomes, the more powerful and creative our hearts can become. As if, for all those years of sleeping, of not being much used, those hearts have not been atrophying, but waiting, resting, getting ready. I'd been arrested before the previous summer at the Montana State Capitol, protesting the state's willingness to sell, at 1,000% loss, toxic coal to China. Coal too dirty to burn in our own country, surface mined from southeastern Montana's bucolic Otter Creek and Tongue River Valley. A business plan exists to get investors in China hooked on building coal plants, which will then raise the world's demand for coal, so that investors who own leases on the United States' vast coal reserves in the West will have a market for their poison. The dirty coal from Montana is being subsidized, almost given away, to facilitate the development of this addiction. Sound familiar? A moral issue, then, though to be absolutely honest, what first caught my attention was the potential loss of a beautiful corner of my expanded backyard in Montana. I just can't seem to shake my old addiction to beauty. And in the Otter Creek protest, I was surprised by how easy it was and how good it felt. The police ask you to leave. You say something like, "No thanks, not until the state land board denies the permit to give away the dirty coal at Otter Creek." And next thing you know, you're wearing cuffs and going for a little ride, paying a little money, and it all feels good. Feels a hell of a lot better than just being quiet and letting the rough beast of Exxon or the Carlyle Group or Warren Buffett pass on by uncontested. Being arrested in D.C. was, as might be expected, a little more intense, and yet even more joyful. The support crews, people on your side who try to take care of you, make calls for you, etc., are always fantastic. Random images I have from the D.C. arrest are leaving the Sierra Club office in a caravan of black Escalades, tinted windows, using a police escort with sirens wailing. Why? How? And Bill looking down at his feet and shaking his head and saying, "This just doesn't feel right." The junior senator from Rhode Island shouting at, exhorting 40,000 people to no longer stay asleep while the fossil fuels industry continues to dictate the world's economic and political policy. Don't be chumps. Don't be chumps. Daryl Hannah waving the peace sign as she giraffe walked to her arrest. What if I'd handcuffed myself to her instead of the White House gates? Focus. The mercurial Bobby Kennedy pounding the pulpit in that so famous, so familiar, beautiful voice, stem winding, and then riding out to the jail with him and the little paddy wagon, 5 of us jammed in there like so many bird dogs in a too small wire mesh kennel, listening to him regale the rest of us with the most wonderful, if often politically incorrect jokes. Me trying to hang with him, offering up one of my own. What did one snowman say to the other? Bobby, I don't know what. Rick, do you smell carrots? Bobby smiling weakly, then continuing on with his great jokes, none of which, as they say, can be printed in a family newspaper. His son Connor riding in the wagon with us in his first arrest. My own 17-year-old daughter, Lowry, came out to join me for the big march on the White House that subsequent weekend. I've got great and lasting memories from the march as well. Bill, coatless at the podium in the 15-below wind chill, and whether having forgotten a coat or knowing that he'd be much photographed and then ridiculed by the fossil fuel industry apologist for wearing a heavy, puffy coat, I don't know. Bill radiant and shivering both, saying how he'd waited 25 years to see this, saying with no irony, "Holy heck," as he looked out at the sea. I remember Lowry's exuberance at being swept up into a larger thing, the passion and hope of unity, the discovery, the witnessing of a family larger than our little one in the yak. We've handed her peers a shit sandwich, but maybe if we awaken, we can at least show them the deep passion of our reawakening. If she is any representative of her generation, it seems they might be overjoyed to be given the encouragement to reach deep and dredge to the surface that which has been asleep in the rest of us for so long. That they will do so with or without our encouragement, but are glad to have us old folks along with them. I remember Reverend Lennox Yearwood saying, "This is our Birmingham. This is our lunch counter moment." I remember the way we flowed, wove, braided, old and young and in between. I remember the exuberance and exhilaration, the wild and colorful costumes and the handmade posters. I recommend it, protesting and being arrested, highly. I'd like to see several million, even 100 million, experience the joy and pride of ownership that is to be gotten by attacking directly the most powerful man-made force on earth, the earth-eating force of the major oil and gas companies. When I was a young man and playing football and lifting weights, I used to kind of brim with a certain fizz. I was a little on the small side. Certainly, compared to my brethren in the trenches, I was tiny. But I had a philosophy of going straight at the biggest guy in the fight, figuring that that was where the scrap was probably going to end up anyway, and better to get in there while fresh than exhausted. We are still fresh in this struggle, and it will be, the struggle of all of our lives and those who come after us. We need to wire, as if laying down electrical pathways, the examples, the models of how to fight. It's going to be a long one, and will determine the future and fate of our species and most others. I can't tell you how rewarding and empowering you'll find it. After a lifetime of failing or at best treading water, to be truly playing for everything, with everything to win and nothing to lose, for everything is already on the descent to loss, it feels good. At the march, when the speeches were over and the 40,000 plus of us were released into the streets, oozing and flowing like waves of light, or like the largest one organism in the world, lifted up and carried along by one shared hope, the belief that we could stop the pipeline from coming through the heartland, on its way to the Gulf, where ships were waiting to take the heavy tar to Asia, it occurred to me that about 1 in 1,000 of us, 46 among that crowd, were perhaps remembering the arrest of a few days previous, the two paths you can go by. We each had to be wondering, what if everyone agrees to get arrested until we bring the giant to its knees? The march was jubilant-making, but I can't forget the arrest either, which was equally empowering. That form of civil disobedience being the furthest one can go against the terrible aggressor without actually participating in violence. Indeed, it occurs to me that being quiet and remaining asleep, even silent, is the greatest act of violence one can perform at this moment in history. On the march, 46 of us were carrying within us the palpitating memory of the cuffs, the loneliness and isolation, including that strange part where, upon being liberated, we walked one by one across the marshy meadowlands in the spitting snow and rain and fog to the pickup point a quarter-mile distant. That had been great, but solitary, lonely. The march was the opposite. When it began, it was like nothing I'd ever been a part of. It's not rabid like a rock concert or sporting event. It's not mind unification like yoga or some deeply felt religious experience. It's joyous and possesses to it the quality of being released as if from a long imprisonment. As if the prisoners had been in captivity for so long that they had forgotten how to imagine ever being free again. As if someone, however, had encouraged them to dream again, to be courageous enough to resurrect and embrace hope, and had then gone a step further and opened the gate for them. At the protest, standing shoulder to shoulder on the grassy mall, we had not been able to see beyond ourselves. We knew there were a lot of us. We could sense it, all of us cloaked in parkas, and we could hear the sea roar of cheers and great masses of applause. But no single one of us below the speaker stage could witness the expanse of us. For that, we had to watch the reflection of that sight in the awed gaze of the men and women up on the stage. It was only when we began to move, to flow through the barricades and into the streets with 40,000 different travelers from all over the country, singing and chanting in various clusters, connected but unconnected, random but coordinated by the jauntiness of hope and the love of effort, that the fizz that the speakers had been emoting about most fully filled us, became ours. We wound through city blocks and passageways like one living thing. We traveled en masse through the city for hours. There was music, singing, chanting, cheering. We wreathed and wrapped the city in our hope. It was a bummer that the president was playing golf that day in Florida with Tiger Woods. Regrettable that he missed such a great civil rights action. But hopefully his aides were able to explain it to him. And hopefully when the arrests start again in larger numbers later in the year, arrests by the thousands, the last and only nonviolent thing remaining that we can do in a time-tested, successful American tradition as proved in the previous civil rights struggles. Hopefully, he will get it then. We have it in our power to get his attention. Right now, he appears distracted. He appears almost to be in denial. We need force and imagination to get his attention back. No one person can do it. But together, all of us and everyone in a family can get his attention. Let this coming year be the year of arrests. Let it become a wholesome family activity like bingo or bowling. The president understands family. Let us meet him where he is. We won't know the effectiveness of this march until many years into the future, but we will know immediately, in our first step of being arrested, the sweet joy of being on the right side of a thing rather than in the damning and ultimately deeply regrettable unseeing middle, on a moral issue that is the largest of our time, the largest of our combined generations living today. It feels good to wake up. Thank you. I'm dead serious. It is so much fun. I hope that everybody in here has that pleasure, that joy, and that you'll have I'm sure you have the opportunity this year. You'll see what I'm talking about. I know a ton of y'all know what I'm talking about, and those who don't might be a little hesitant about it. It is just flat fun. You feel good for weeks. It's better than chiropractor. I'm going to read a real quick little story about water and rivers. Again, that was so wonderful and powerful to have y'all blessing the river yesterday. It was really an honor to be part of it. Thanks for coming out here to do that. And this is one of those stories that this band has made music for me reading. I'll talk about it later, but I've got some CDs there afterward. And Brenna in the bright shirt is helping me move them, for which I thank you, and as well as other things. It's a tie-dye. It's not a tie-dye shirt, but it looks like it. The story's called The Canoeist. The two of them would go canoeing on any of the many winding creeks and rivers that braided their way through the woods and gentle hills to the north. They would drive north in Bone's old truck and put the boat on the Brazos or the Colorado or White Oak Creek, or even the faster-running green waters of the Guadalupe, without a care of where they might end up, and would explore those unknown seams of water and bright August light with no maps, knowing only what lay right before them as they rounded each bend. They would take wine and a picnic lunch and fishing tackle and a lantern. They drifted beneath high, chalky bluffs, beneath old bridges, and past country yards where children playing tag on the hillsides among trees above the river stopped to watch them pass. They paddled on, Bone shirtless in the stern and Sissy straw-hatted in the bow, in her swimsuit. When they reached sun-scrubbed bars of white sand next to the deep, dark pools, around the bend from any town or road, shaded by towering oaks, they would beach the canoe and lie on blankets in the sun like basking turtles, sweating, nude, glistening, drinking wine and getting up every now and again to run down to the river and dive in, to cleanse the suntan oil and grit of sand and shine of sex from their bodies. Hot breezes would dry their bodies quickly again once they returned to the blankets. Their damp hair would keep them cool for a little while. They would lie perfectly still on their backs, looking up at the sun, hands clasped, and listen to the shouts, the sawing buzz of the 17-year locust going insane back in the forest, choking on the heat. Later, when the day had cooled slightly, when the tops of the trees were beginning to catch and block some of the sun's direct rays, they would climb back into the green canoe and drift farther downstream, unconcerned by the notions or constraints of time and the amount of water that had passed by. If anything, they felt nourished and enriched by it. They would paddle on into dusk and then into the night, falling deeper in love and speaking even less as night fell, paddling with the lantern lit and balanced on the bow, with moths following them. They had no idea where they were, while Bone would cast to fish, sometimes catching one silver fighting and leaping just outside the glow cast by the lantern's ring of light. Fireflies would line the banks, illuminating the route they should take. The fireflies would not venture over water, so the darkness of their absence was a winding lane for them. And they passed, too, occasionally, the bright window-square blazes of farmhouses, of families tucked in for the night, also lining both edges of the shore. When they came to a lonely bridge or railroad trestle, they would finally relinquish the day, or that part of it, to the river, and eddy out to the bank, where Sissy would climb out with the lantern, and Bone would pass her the equipment, and then he would climb out and shoulder the canoe like some shell-bound brute. And they would pick their way up the slope, clambering through brush and litter tossed from decades of the bridge's passers-by, ascending to the road and firm, level ground, while the river below kept running past. Owls would be hooting, and heat lightning, like a pulse or an echo from the day's troubles, or like a price that must be paid for the day's bliss, would be shuddering in distant sky flash in all directions, though it seemed like no price or debt or accounting to Bone and Sissy, only more blessing, as the breezes from the far-off thunderstorm stirred and cooled them as they walked through cricket song and darkness, save for those glimmers of lightning and the fireflies that dotted the meadows and swarmed around the couple as if accompanying them. They might be 5 miles from their truck, or they might be 20. How to get there they would have no idea, but neither would they be worried. Bone would not be due back at work for another 12 hours. They would walk down the center of the dark road, Bone toting the canoe over his head like a crucifix or some huge umbrella, and Sissy walking beside him, feeling love for him as a human, but also with the comfortable affection and unspoken communication one has with animals, a dog, a horse, a gentle bull, a cat. And she felt much the same herself, part human, but part other animal as well. And it was, again, the calmest she could ever remember being. After a while, a vehicle would approach from one direction or another, almost always an old truck in that section of the country, and the driver would give them a ride. They would lash the canoe in belly side down as if it were still in the water and climb up into the cab with the old farmer and ride back north into the night, though other times when there was no rope they would sit in the canoe itself in the back, slanted skyward, gripping both the canoe's gunwales and the side of the truck to keep it from sliding out. They would ride seated in the canoe, wind rushing past them at 40, 50 miles an hour, and would be unafraid, too deep in love to know anything beyond the beauty of the moment, their hair swirling and the rolls of lightning wash flashing. Sometimes their patron, as he crossed a county line, would want to stop at the neon red of a bar. Only a handful of other old trucks parked out in front. And they would climb out of the canoe to go inside with him, to share a beer and perhaps a sandwich or ribs. The sides of their green canoe would be smeared with the wind-crushed bodies from the swarms of fireflies they'd driven through, some of them still glowing gold but becoming dimmer, as if cooling. And it made the canoe look special and pretty, like a float in some parade. And people in the bar would come to the doorway and stare for a moment at it thus decorated, and at Bone and Sissy, as if someone special or important or simply charmed had come to visit. They would drink a beer, would shoot a game or two of pool, and would visit in the dark bar, listening to the jukebox while the summer storm moved in and thundered across and past like the nighttime passage of some huge herd of animals above. And afterward, when they went back out and climbed into their canoe to head on back north, with the driver searching for where they had left their truck, the air would be scrubbed clean and cooler, and steam would be rising from the dark roads, and the smears of fireflies would be washed from their canoe, so that all was dark around them again. They would find their truck eventually, and would thank the old driver and shake his hand. And for the rest of his short days, he would remember having given them a ride, as they would likewise remember it for the rest of their long days. They would drive home toward the big city with the windows rolled down, listening to the radio. They would unload the canoe when they got to Bone's house and climb the stairs without bothering to turn on any of the lights. It might be 2 or 3 in the morning. They would undress and climb into his bed, into the familiar clean sheets, warmer upstairs, and open the windows for fresh air, and would make love again, both for the pleasure of it as well as to somehow seal or anchor their return home. And at daylight, Bone would awaken and shower and dress in his suit and head to work, leaving Sissy still asleep in his bed, their bed, swirled in white cotton sheets and asleep in a wash of morning sun. Thank you.
Can you hear me? This is the first time I've held a mic and a sheet of paper in my hand, so this may not go well. So our next keynote this evening is the fierce and wonderful writer, artist, and activist Wang Ping. She is accompanied tonight by musician Alex Wan, with whom she collaborates on the Kinship of Rivers project, parts of which you see strung about this room in the back. Ms. Wang was born in Shanghai, lived on a small island off the coast of China, studied at Beijing University and New York University, and currently teaches at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota. You all probably already know this if you've read her biography in our symposium brochure. What you might not know, and what I found out today, is that Miss Wong came to the United States with $26 in her pocket, and a willpower so strong that she has become an exceptional, prolific, multi-genre writer and artist, a vocal advocate for issues of environmental and societal justice, and a respected professor who reaches and inspires hundreds of students each year to pursue their passions, to believe in whatever they hold, to make $26 stretch into a lifetime's pursuit of discovery and creation. This afternoon, Ms. Wong reminded me and a small group of like-minded, aspiring professional writers why it is we choose our crazy goals in life. She said that to have belief and pride in what you care about is the thing that makes you warp your life into purpose. If you wish to write, you write not only when you are at your desk with a laptop or a pen and paper, but when you look through the branches of a tree budding into spring, when you feel the pebbles under your feet through your boot soles and your socks. If you wish to sing, you sing in your head, and you sing in your dreams, and you sing without shame or fear in the shower. If you wish to fight for everyone's right to free and clean drinking water, if you wish to fight, as Ms. Wong does, against gender or racial discrimination at work or in your community, you think about it all the time. Ms. Wong transforms thoughts into words, into the art you see around you on these walls, connecting the riverside communities of the Mississippi with the Yangtze, and into the poetry and music she will perform tonight with Alex Wand. Please join me in welcoming them both.
Thank you so much, and what a beautiful place. And these two banners in the back will be my most favorite banners, and they already. Usually, like each place I go to, I sprinkle water onto the flags, and we forgot. But then I remember the rain has already blessed these flags in the woods, right? And so, thank you so much, Gita. I'm trying to steal Gita to bring her along to the Yangtze River. We'll see how it goes, and. So the sonnet crown, I don't know if you know about sonnet crowns, and 14 lines of sonnet, right? And then the last line of the sonnet becomes the first line of the next sonnet. And because each sonnet has 14 lines, so we write 14 sonnets, and the crown is the last line, and the first line of each sonnet, you tie them all together, okay? And I started this sonnet actually is in 2010. 2010, I was invited to Edinburgh to do a reading. And I was also collaborating with a filmmaker, Isaac Julian. He was making 10,000 Waves, and he commissioned me to write poetry for his film installation. And when he heard I was going there, he just really bugged me every day to go to London to record my poems for his film. And I really didn't want to, because I wanted to walk around Scotland. And so I finally did it, and then I had to fly back to Edinburgh. And at the airport, I said, I missed Scotland, and I'm going to reward myself with a bottle of scotch. So I went to the international shop, and I said, give me your best and the most expensive bottle of scotch. And she said, guarantee you will love it. It's the smokiest, the best whiskey you can ever get. So I took that and I sat down at the airport. Then a really a really good-looking and energetic man sat down next to me, and we started talking. And then it turned out he was flying on the same flight with me. So we walked in. And then the door closed and the plane started. And I said, oh my God, I left my whiskey at the airport. And he said, oh, no worry, I will send you a whole case. I said, who are you? And he said, well, I'm Bruce, Charles Bruce. Anyone knows Charles Bruce? He is the descendant of Robert the Bruce. He's Lord Bruce. and so he said, I will send you a case of whiskey. And but he hasn't sent me yet. And when I came back and I said, I'm going to write a sonnet to remind him the whiskey. And I wrote one, I sent him, he really liked it. And the whiskey still didn't arrive. So I kept writing, reminding him the gift, right? So he said I should go there and then, to do a residency in Scotland. They have a castle. Rick, you should try that too. The Scotland, they have a castle. So I'm going to go there and get my whiskey there. But meanwhile, the sonnet crown finished. And I was doing it. It took me 2 years to complete the sonnet. And the Kingship River was born around the same time as I started Sonnet Crown. And then during this period, I also paddled the entire St. Croix River, the 2,046 river miles. And then I also, during the 2 years, I completed the entire travel of the Mississippi River. And then last December, I also paddled the lower Mississippi River, 356 river miles, and from Arkansas all the way to Vicksburg. So all these Sonnet Crown is kind of like all the images and sound, that through the travel. And as I was writing these sonnet crowns, I kind of like get bored, and certain content required me to do something different. So I combined ghazal, which is an Iranian Sufi poetry form. And so you will see some poems, some of the sonnets are ghazal form, but it's 14 lines. So it's kind of cheat, but it's kind of invention. Okay? And then, when did we meet? November, right?
October. Yeah.
October, I was invited to do an installation in Nebraska, and I walked in, and he was there with his steel guitar, and I just said, I'm going to steal this this man and this guitar to do Kingship of the Rivers. And I knew immediately he would like Chinese herbal, and also I knew he would like I Ching. And it turned out I'm right. He's an I Ching fanatic. So I gave him pulse, and I gave him a few diagnoses about his health, what he needs.
And in exchange, I wrote the music for these sonnets.
Yeah. That's how we started collaborating, And Nebraska City Center, they were kind of freaking out. Pink stole, Alex Wand, like within a few hours. But I think it's the Kingship Rivers, and it really has the magic power, just brings everyone in right away. So another thing I want to let you know is he has been trying to encourage me to sing part of the Tibetan songs, and I think it's appropriate because Tibetan, the Kingship Rivers are one of the things I really try to bring the Tibetan as indigenous at the headwaters of the Yangtze River with Native Americans at Minnesota. And also the river flags is also borrowed, the concept of the river flags is borrowed from Tibetan prayer flags. Okay, so I'm going to make a fool of myself to sing part of that Tibetan songs. So, all right. the river in our blood, a sonnet crown. The geese are painting the sky with a V, my lord. The Mississippi laughs with its white teeth. How fast winter flees from the lowland, my lord. And how's the highland where songs forever cease. At the confluence, I sing of the prairie, my lord. My joy and sorrow soar with rolling spring. Its thunder half bird, half mermaid, my lord. No poppies on hills, only ghost warriors calling. Today is Chunfeng, share of spring, my lord. Two spirits, one on phoenix wings, one on lion's seat. Across the sea, kindred spirits, my lord. Prayers through breath, laughing children on streets. Let's open our gift, acorn of small things. Let river move us without wants or needs. Cycad. Let river moves us without wants or needs. Let cycads carry their fruit in naked seeds. No flower to adorn your heart. Roots pulling food from sand, stones. What magic in your seed?
What magic?
White flesh burns the nerves of the ignorant. What desire and love
Desire
wedged in your cold seed. Along colored veins, age of cycads, rings of truth in your dried palm, an open seed, naked to sun and the moon. Herbivores' teeth carry you across the chasm. In the crown, a seed running from pole to pole.
in the crown a sea.
The sea was one body unhinged, spewing lava into your seed.
You are not shadow.
You are not shadows from Permian of China.
Look at this beauty.
Look at this beauty, so simple, in your agate seed. Rick knows cycad, right? What cycad is, probably.
this beauty so simple in your agate sea. The blue jay calls from the river's blue mouth. What runs from a roof flows to the east sea. What winds towards the north and spills into the south. Last night on the highlands, snow and rain. Winter's muddy feet drag behind the spring's farm. In the valley, sounds of a whooping crane. A wheelbarrow copper edged by the dawn.
The river has broken the rain of ice, taking boulders, trees, teeth of dams, or swirling to the wastes of cottonwoods, oaks, grills, spice. Who can stop her riding on eagle's wings?
Truth can't be drowned in books or in a winter's light. Moon on river's bend, long day of May fly. Limestone ridge along the Silk Route, face of Dubai, crumbles, wind and hyssop thyme, wild mustard. This flayed land, so raw, parched, only seeds fly to take roots in the conqueror's footprints. Dusk weeps like sand through hands, pulling first cry from Azen's throat. A black slave is God's imprint. Home under ash cloud, dart and swallow. From hospitals, roses on broken walls. Takes at the border, shadows that get all. dervish whirls, palm to earth, palm to sky.
Who gave us the hand to feel your sublime? Give us the hand to feel your sublime. Which hunter caught the fire in the bird's eye? My lord, your falcon leads the path of ice and fire. The gate is open for those chosen to climb. The volcano came alive this morning. Glaciers slide into the womb of the earth. How do you stop a heart from trembling as ice cuts into the fire of new birth? Along the winged path, night of thousand hearts. In the East Sea, maiden of thousand hands. Mist wraps the islands and your boat of glass. The horse calls his master from distant lands. The warrior draws his sword from Arthur's seat. How do you keep the same back from the deep? Again, this constant change. Our heart just keeps beating at its own pace.
To die and live again, this constant change. Our hearts just keep beating at its own pace. Fear, anger, sorrow, storms beyond our range. And bends bear the new space. Veins of water cross the delta risk, opening dropped hands, fish reeds, frogs and puddle. Home where cranes stop for a drink, then rising back to their birthplace. The spirit shuttle.
Heaven Heaven and earth, how you follow this primordial path. The brain a wrinkled mass, keep us at bay. Eyes on the black swallow from distant sea, messenger through tall grass.
Memory split from the fountain of you. Hold us to this place, this beat, this truth. You hold it to this place, this beat, this truth. Wild turkey for guests, yam and sweet rice stuffing.
Peacock dance, flamenco hands, sorghum spirits soothe straight ghosts. In China, there's no Thanksgiving. Good words flow from glass to glass. 10,000 geese in the sky, 10,000 waves from north to south.
Sounds of flute, a pining soul no one can appease. A lover turned into a stone at the river's mouth. A crazed mother crying for her burst bubble. Breaths of Tai Chi circling with phoenix flows. What arrow points can silence your fire, a true singer. Soars over the cawing of 10,000 crows. We feed ghosts to kill an inherited shame. Nobody claims rivers at the end game.
Rivers at the end of game. Swans trumpet from head of the Mississippi. Along the trails, snow dogs, woodpeckers. Same difference as children slide with whoopee laugh. And rivers rumble like summer nights. On sandstone bluffs, lover watch. Boats dart like insects. Walking on water is not a sleight of hands, but an instinct. Echoes of distant stars and the sturgeons charging without food or sleep. Keep going, says the master, one stroke at a time. Breathe between waves. His voice steep from tumors, yet he stands furious and sublime. What arrows points us to grace, here and now? A swan's touch, neck bending into a bow. A swan's touch, neck bending into a bow. A storm without premonition. Pines, oaks, elders. Ancient dreams snapped at the waist. Chopped trailers. All the trees that should be down are down, said Ranger Bob. His oars dipping like wings of falcon. In the river, mussels lure for hungry fish, shooting eggs into their gills, teeth to hang on and legs to walk home. The Seine Croix unfolds a silk ribbon. Our boat cuts, no sound of humans, only turtles bathing on rocks, and horseflies taking chunks of meat. Our breath moves with the damselflies. Their wings of butterfly, neon, turquoise, and black, so sweet.
We raise our oars to follow summer flood. The river runs through us, our kin, our blood.
The river runs through us, our kin, our blood. Big Dipper, solar winds, life in Tannin earth.
Solon Spring to Prescott, 250 miles of flood. We follow clams, milkweeds, odes from same birth.
We skid rapids glittered with gold. The stars girth our napes. Namakarkan, home for sturgeon dreams.
Manoman, berries for fish, loons, our daily hearth. Spirits of Minnesota, Wisconsin, in salty streams.
We turn boats with boils and eddies, our screams echoed by thrushes, tents full of stubborn mosquitoes.
Thunders, yet when coffee steams through the rain, and misties the river into a ribbon.
We sit.
We sit in the world begins to unravel as each blade of grass turns with its angel.
Every blade of grass turns with its angel. Every breath we make churns your heartbeats. A child becomes father's man in the cradle. A wave is a wave is a wave, regardless our defeats. Our lie bends and bends around the purple night. At twilight, the mask unveils a scorched soul. A cycle of 64 days of riches from the Scorpio kite. The way is open, then shuts with a gaping O. The hammer, anvil, and stirrup, the smallest bone in the sea of cochlea. A spiral, a million fingers brushing ecstasy to the seat of throne. A ripple is a ripple is a ripple, forever seeking the seekers. This is the gift I owed you from future and past. This is my eye, blindly, in the river wild and fast. Next one is for Chen Guangchen. He's a blind lawyer from China, activating for women who don't want to be forced to have forced abortions. And then one night he climbed the wall from his house arrest, and then now he's studying law in New York. I've been following him, and when he fled, I wrote this Hazel sonnet for him. For Chen Guangchen, the blind lawyer from China. This is my eye blindly in the river wild and fast, through the steely gaze towards the promised freedom. Rumors storm back and forth between ocean currents. Machines clank to grind a small man's plea for freedom. Not for asylum or paradise, not for money or fame. All I want is a room in this giant country, a freedom to take children to school, to guide my sisters out of the maze, free to be mothers again, free to raise the young, grow old in peace, a place where hunger, prison, or death cannot blackmail freedom, where the poor, the blind, the colored, the small can live in dignity and joy. Freedom is never free, must pave with eyes, ears, hands, brick by brick, with a heart willing to bleed till it breaks free.
Let rivers move without our want or need. This beauty so simple in its agate seed.
Moon on river's band, long day of mayfly. Who gave us the hand to feel your sublime?
Our heart keeps beating at its own pace. Back from the deep, how do you keep the same?
You hold us to the place, this deep, this beat, this face. Nobody claims river at the end game.
A swan's touch, neck bending into a bow. The river runs through us, our kin, our blood.
Every blade of grass turns with its angel. My eye blindly in the water wild and fast.
Our heart willing to bleed till it breaks free. My lord, the geese are painting the sky with a V.
要勒索，那就是青藏高原。要勒索，那就是